Hello and welcome back as we continue with Son of a Witch. Okay, so our next section is called The Service. And there's no individual chapters, so I'm just going to read as far as I can. A notion of character, not so much discredited as simply forgotten, once held that people only came into themselves partway through their lives. They woke up, were lucky enough to have consciousness, in the act of doing something they already know how to do, feeding themselves with currants, walking the dog, knotting up a broken bootlace, singing antiphonically in the choir. Suddenly, this is I am the girl singing this alto line off key. I am the boy loping after the dog, and I can see myself as probably as presumably the dog cannot see itself. How peculiar. I lifted on my toes at the end of the dock to dive into the lake because I am hot, and while isolated like a specimen in the glassy slide of summer, the notions of hot lake and I converge into a conscientiousness of conscientiousness. In an instant, in between launch and landing, even before I cannot vault into the lake, shattering my reflection in my old notion of myself. That's what was once believed. Now it seems hardly to matter when and how we became ourselves or how we even become. Theory chases theory about how we are composed. The only constant, the abjuration of personal responsibility. We are the next thing the time dragon is dreaming, and nothing to be done about it. We're the fanciful sketch of Riley You're droll and ornamental, and no more culpable than a sprig of lavender or a sprig of lightning, and nothing to be done about it. We are an experiment in situation ethics set by the unnamed God, which is keeping its identity secret also cloaks the experiment and our chances of success or failure, nothing to be done about it. We're loping sequences of chemical conversation, acting ourselves converted. We're a twist of genes acting ourselves twisted. We are wicks of burning neuroses acting ourselves wicked, and nothing to be done about it. And nothing to be done about it. In some humble quarters of Oz, gossip had long held that Elphaba Throp, the Wicked Witch of the West, had been born a wise soul, already formed, somehow conscious. Why else would the mouthful of sharp choppers not so much baby pearls as python's teeth, with some folks insisting she'd be sporting at birth? She came into the world with advanced knowledge of its corruption, and in the womb she had prepared for it as best she could by growing those teeth. That's what was said, anyway. Not everyone is born a witch or a saint. Not everyone is born talented or crooked or blessed. Some are born definite in no particular at all. We are a fountain of shimmering contradictions, most of it us. Beautiful in the concept, if we're lucky, but frequently tedious or regretful as we flesh ourselves out. The governess of the moneyed class has often held that a child ought to be kept from witnessing cruelty and ugliness. The better to be preserved some ounce of innocence, ruler grannies and spinster aunts, like Nanny, who had helped raise Elphaba, neither mollied or coddled. They believed it was better for a child to know that befalls a chicken when the feast of Lorine rolls around. Better to learn from a distance the tricks perpetrated on the weak, the distractible, the unlucky. Both pedagogical stances, however, relied on a common assumption. Growth and change were viewed as a region to conditions met. One might as easily argue, however, it is the world's obligation to respond to children. By force of personality, by dint of their vicious beauty and untamed ways, children tromp into the world ready to disfigure it. Children surrender nothing when face the world. It is the world that gives up, over and over again, but by so giving up, it renews itself. That is the secret. Dying in order to live, that sort of thing. You could catalog the 1,000 ways people shrink from life, as if chance and change are by now their nature toxic, disfiguring. Elphaba, with her sympathies far more substantial than her luck, had at least wrestled with the question. She shoved and barked and made herself a right nuisance. By contrast, the Quadling girl, Candle, was an interpreter savant, translating text of the world whose fundamental nature she hadn't grasped, and maybe never would. Did the difference between an Elphaba and a Candle come down to merely a question of focal depth? The big picture versus the little picture? For his part, Lear had not been a bright child. Even on the edge of puberty, he had been given a little thought to the paradoxes of his existence. He had managed himself to be more like Chistery, the chief snow monkey, than like Nor and her brothers, Irgi and Monek. Chistery had a slipsy-doodle sense of language, but he tended towards steadiness. He did his chores without complaining or forgetting, and asked for nothing beyond his basic needs. Even at 14, Lear had not been much more demanding than Chistery. But Lear remembered that Nor had addressed the stars, sung harmony with mountain streams, had loved all creatures, whether their initials were written great or small, animal or animal. She was nuts as a nut in a tree forest. Of course, that's what he thought without realizing he was thinking anything at all. That silly Nor was a creature apart, not just a girl, though, of course, but a fragment of human possibility. She had sympathetic imagination, and Lear he could barely count. Children often define themselves in relation to their parents, emulating them or working hard as possible to avoid resembling them in any way. Since the identity of both his parents was in doubt, Lear couldn't see himself as taking it after anyone for sure. Certainly not Elphaba. In her final months, stooped, crab scrabbing from desk to podium to window ledge, she was more like a quivering scorpion than a woman. At rest, her fingers tended to curl up like a claw, or like the petals of a flower gone a bit blowsy. Her hand was always out, always open, ready to take what is found there and seize it. Not at all like Lear, who cowered. Among the humankind, even though the most jaded and bitter of animals, there are many ways to be wrong. But there's only a relatively few ways to be young, in their generous apprehension of the world. For insatiable appetite for the world, the young are to be forgiven. And I'm gonna stop it right there. See you later.